recording. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us. Again, we're from Minnesota Contemporary Quilters. And I would say to people who aren't quilters, sometimes they get us mixed up because our acronyms are so close. So tonight, I just want to give you a preview of what we're going to talk about. First of all, is just what is contemporary quilting, some examples of contemporary quilting, and then I want to give you a flavor of our upcoming speakers that we have coming up and tell you a little bit more about our guild. All right. So the one thing is with a definition, there isn't one universal definition. So I'm going to give you several. So Susan Stein, who is a member of ours and also a member, I believe, of yours, her definition is contemporary quilting is the making of one-of-a-kind pieces. They might be inspired by traditional patterns, but contemporary quilts go beyond repeating what's been done before. Contemporary quilts often include surface designs such as painting, dyeing, batik, etc., which makes them more unique since the maker has created the cloth as well as the design. Many contemporary quilts are intended for use on walls rather than beds, but they may become whatever the maker can dream up, including wedding canopies and theater props.
Hey, Cindy Kay.
Yep.
I can't see your screen.
You can't. Can anyone else?
Yes, I can.
I see both of you.
Yep.
But
We're only seeing your profiles. We're not seeing your screens.
Yeah, we see your faces, but not what your screen is saying.
Let me just try this
We're not
again.
seeing your
Then.
slides yet.
If you don't have
Not
slides,
bad.
you haven't seen those. I can see both of you though.
Okay, I think I goofed. I apologize.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I see what
Oh.
you're doing. Okay.
there, that's better.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you so much for stopping me before we do ours. All right.
Well, I knew we had slides.
Yes, all right. All right. So there was the definition I just read from Susan Stein. So again, the emphasis is on like one of a kind and that they often have the surface design element. No, I am. Okay. The definition from the Quilt Guild in England, they use this. Contemporary quilters are a diverse group of quilters and fabric artists working at the cutting edge of quilt making, creating innovative and dynamic art. They take traditional techniques and push them to their limits by using new fabrics and technology and encouraging original design. And then the Art Quilt Association says, an art quilt is an original exploration of a concept or an idea rather than the handing down of a pattern. The art quilt experiments with textile manipulation, color, texture, and/or a diversity of mixed media. An art quilt often pushes quilt world boundaries. So some key elements from those three different definitions are that we're talking about original design. We're talking about surface design, which could be dyeing of fabrics, indigo, painting, screen printing. It's inspired by traditional, but not confined by the traditional. And also the last thing is the use of technology. Right. Having trouble going forward. Okay, so let's see some examples of contemporary quilting. And most of these examples I'm going to show you are from our last year's challenge. So this first one from Nancy Berger is called Take Two. And here we're seeing improv construction and also deconstructed screen printing. And with deconstructed screen printing, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it's where you're taking a screen and you're putting the dye on there, letting it dry, and then you release it with another agent, let's call it, and you end up with this kind of really imperfect line, which is quite an exciting process to do. My second example is using a photo print. And in here, Peg Lasota, her piece is called Como Park. And she's taken her own original photo, had it printed on satin fabric, and then done the stitching. Here's an example of mine, and this is called Let the Light of Democracy Shine On. And in this case, I'm using Shibori, monoprinting, and improv piecing. And the Shibori is in the lower left corner, giving that sunburst. And that is a Japanese technique of manipulating the fabric before you dye it, either from stitching or folding. And you get the resist then. All right. In the definition, I talked about taking a concept and pushing that. And in this case, Peg Lindbergh, her piece titled For All, she is used painting and deconstructed screen printing on woven cloth. And she does a lot of drawing. Her work is amazing. There's a lot of detail that doesn't quite show up in here, but it fascinating. Another example of improv piecing here, Susan Colfelt, her piece is called Keeping Hope Alive. And you see this reference to a traditional design with the star, plus she's used improvisational piecing. Indigo and Cyno printing. This is by Mimi Pollard, called Home Alone. And here she uses surface design, including indigo and cyanotype printing. And cyanotype printing is a process where it's like a blue ink. In the 19th century, it was used by engineers to do what we call blueprints. So you can either treat a fabric with a chemical, or you can buy fabric prepped and then create a prints. And that would be the leaves in the middle of her piece. In this example, Sharon England's Around the Corner is experimenting with color. Here, she's used cotton and it's fused and stitched, and kind of pushing that idea of applique to create the, her concept of what she wants to exhibit. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm
Cindy, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Laura. I was just wondering, could you give us a sense of the size? You said this was a challenge, so were they all the same size?
They're all under 36 inches wide.
Thank you.
We try to stay within that just because of space constraints. We're often exhibiting at like libraries or city hall and in different places. So so they're all wall quilts.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy, I was also going to mention that as co-host, I am monitoring the chat for questions.
Great.
So I will either interrupt or I will hold them. I'm jotting them down for the end, whatever.
Thank you. All right, here is one of our newer members, Pat Grady. She came to us from Wearable Arts Midwest. Her piece is called Be Still. And here she's pushing this boundary of what fabrics are considered quilt fabrics. So she's used shibori dyeing, applique alcohol dyed silk, and other reclaimed fabrics. Here is from the 2020 challenge, graphic interpretations. Our member Judy Osbon, Actions Speak Volumes. She used paint, markers, and stitching to work out her idea of what was, in her mind at the time.
Cindy, could you explain the challenge? Somebody asked, could you just explain the challenge as you're going, what the challenge was?
So the 2021 was graphic interpretations. And so, and then, oh my gosh, the 2021 was, help me out, Lori. I'm blanking out now.
Turning Point.
Turning Point. Thank you, Wynn. And so we give some suggestions, but we leave it up to the members to interpret that how they want. All right. And then in this one from Marion Hollick is a self-portrait, and self-portraits are often used by artists to express themselves. And I just love this piece because between the coloring and the different techniques, and I believe in here we've got some fusing and some dyeing, maybe some paint sticks. All right. So I think I got all of the examples. Any questions about the quilts?
I'm not
I have
seeing
a question.
anything. Sorry, go ahead.
This is Mary Tag. I have a question. Do you have any idea how much time the artists spend on these pieces? I mean, you're doing a challenge at least every year. Do people tend to do the challenges every year? Or does it vary a lot?
We have a group that tends to do it pretty regularly. Other ones, it kind of is if the theme speaks to you.
Mhm.
And I think our challenges, I'd like to say, really took off about 10, 15 years ago. We had Creative Life on the Mississippi. And in that one, I felt like people really stepped up and were, really did just outstanding work. And it just has kind of kept up since then.
Thank you.
And because they know it happens every year, and the challenges always debut at the Minnesota Quilt exhibit or at the show, that it's kind of a winter project for a lot of people. So they'll really dedicate a lot of time to it.
Brenda had asked if you see a difference between art and contemporary.
That's an interesting question because some people don't like the word art. A lot of our members kind of have to grow into that term because it sounds like, well, I didn't go to art school, so I can't call myself an artist. So it really depends on the person, but to me, they're often overlapping, if not interchangeable. But that's just a personal opinion. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'm going to turn it over to Lori.
Well, to clarify Brenda's question, she said at the show, we have an art category, not a contemporary one.
So ours, we are under the special exhibit category. So that's where our challenge always falls under that. We exhibit as a special exhibit.
Yeah, I was just saying that if people are outside of that and are going to enter something and judged, we don't have a category called contemporary. So the closest category would be art, probably.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's where people then would submit.
Okay, for upcoming programs, you can see examples of what some of our members are doing. So what we really try to do for our programs is get speakers that are going to be doing some of those techniques or are really kind of pushing the borders and pushing us to try new techniques, try new concepts, use new materials. And really, we're using our speakers as inspiration for our members to, just continue to develop their skills, develop their techniques, develop their art, and really just give them a springboard for, trying some new things as well. So what we wanted to do is just share with you some of the upcoming programs that we have. Cindy Kay, do you want to?
Oops, thank you.
Go to the next screen. So these are some of the things that we have coming up for this year. Our February meeting, Jan Beanie and Jean Littlejohn are going to join us, and they live in England, and they're international textile artists and authors. And they work with soluble fabrics, hand and machine stitching, and then embellishing. And you can really see that good on the close-up of this particular work that they have done. And we're just so excited to have them join us. We have some of our members that have taken classes from them, and have all of their books. And so this is just going to be a great privilege that we have to have them with us. And the next one. Then in March, Sandra Meach is going to be with us. And of course, these are via Zoom. And she also lives in England. And you can see that that this piece of art of hers, it's really inspired by a lot of the trips she takes to Iceland and Antarctica. And her quilts usually begin with photos, and then she adds paint, collage, and then her images are transferred onto cloth and then machine stitched. And when I look at this piece of art, you know, it just looks so much like a photo. So some of the work she's doing is just fabulous that I have seen on her website, and we're really looking forward to having her with us. Okay, Cindy, the next one. Then in April, we have Gwen Redman, and you can see her topic here, digital explorations. She prints photographs on fiber using an inkjet printer and mixed media techniques, and then she adds a lot of texture with stitching. So as you can see, you know, many of these artists are sharing with us their multiple techniques that they're using for some of their pieces. Next slide. But there's more. So Marilyn Murphy, she's going to join us in May. And some of you have maybe heard that name before. She does a lot of blogging for Cloth Roads. And that's an organization that promotes cultural and creative sustainability with a passion for beautiful textiles and sharing global cultures. And she's going to take us on a journey to meet some weavers, dyers, knitters, and spinners of a cooperative in the Peruvian highlights. So this meeting isn't so much, you know, particular techniques from artists, but it's really some insight and a journey to visit some wonderful artisans in Peru and, you know, just really rejoice and be amazed at some of the work that they're doing. Then we have Judith Plotner, and I wanted to include this one just because of the title of her presentation, Blurring the Edges of Quilting, Painting, and Printing. And by trade, she is a painter and a printmaker. So what she's doing with her art is, you know, incorporating that into her quilting. And then we have Laura Wenstrom joining us next summer, or this summer, and she is from Minneapolis, and she does a lot of work with secondhand materials that she sources, and then she works in 2 and 3 dimensions, and of course she adds a lot of color and fabric to her work. And then I just wanted to mention too that we have, you know, all of our programs planned for 2022. And then we really have most of our programs planned already for 2023. And I just wanted to mention a couple of those. One is Gwen Westerman. She's the Minnesota Poet Laureate. And we also found out that she's a quilter. So she's going to be joining us in 2023. And then I know many of you know Cindy Grisdella. I'm sure some of you have taken a class with her before. You've seen her books. And I believe there was we had a joint program between Minnesota Quilters and MCQ in 2018, where we hosted Cindy Grisdella, and she's going to be joining us for some updates on what she's been doing with her improv quilting. So that's some of what's going on with our programming for 2022 and 2023. Any questions?
Could you, there were several questions. Could you address where Minnesota or where the Modern Quilt Guild meets, when, and if there would be time zone differences with the English speakers, etc.?
Well, one of our next slides is going to give us some information about, you know, when we meet and so on.
All right.
But like our program for this month with our speakers from Jan Beanie and Jean Littlejohn, they requested that we have our meeting, I think it's at noon, to accommodate their schedule. And then the next month in March with Sandra Meach, she's fine with staying up a little bit later. So our meeting with her is going to be, I think it's 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. But those are the 2 meetings that are different times than what we normally meet. So here's some information about our meetings. You know, it's the 4th Monday of the month at 6:30. And, you know, we've been doing Zoom just like you guys have been. And that has that has really worked well. And so we're planning on doing that again for 2022, 2023. And then we have all of our programs listed on our website. We updated the website about a year ago. So, as soon as we get confirmations from speakers, we try to get that information on our website. So all of our programs for 2022 are there, and even a few of them into 2023. And then we talked earlier about the annual quilt challenge. And so pushing upwards is the theme for this year. And again, as Cindy K mentioned, that will preview at the MQ show in June. And just to give you a little idea of some of the other things that we're doing, we have retreats at Camp WAPO. Now, some of that has just been on hold during COVID, but I know once things settle down a little bit, we'll get back to doing that again. And we've had special events, including like some Zoom stitch sessions. And that has really been a great opportunity to build community within the group. I've attended a few of those, and people are just so willing to share their ideas. And, it's just a wonderful time to be with each other. And then again, borrowing privileges at the Textile Center Library is another benefit of MCQ.
One second, I'm trying to go back. Oh. We missed this slide.
Oh, here, this one. So our mission, we foster creativity by welcoming the art quilting community to learn, share, and inspire. And we were real careful when we came up with this mission statement, and especially the words learn, share, and inspire. We spent a lot of time talking about those and what we wanted to communicate there. And that's so true, learning, sharing, and inspiring. We're doing that through our programs, through our retreats. We get together with small groups. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Cindy K, help me out here.
I think you said that, and people are just so inspirational. Like if you call a member, if they've done something, like, certain kind of printing, you call them and they'll be like, oh, come on over, let's do it. So yeah, really inspiring of one another.
And we're a small guild, 125 members, and the cost of membership, $42 a year. And again, as we've been talking about, as you guys know too, with your organization, it's just a great opportunity to build close friends with each other when we're part of these organizations. And, we can just be so blessed to have this in common and have opportunities to get together and share our passions with each other like we do.
Yeah. And I will also say being online has been an interesting bonus because like my sister is a quilter and she lives in Michigan. She joined. And so now I feel like we're closer because we can do this. We can participate online now together. So.
And we've gotten some other members too from like Colorado and
New Mexico.
Yeah. And even like Rochester, somebody from Rochester generally is not going to drive to the cities on a Monday night to join our meeting. So, I mean, going through the pandemic has been tough, but there's also been some good things coming out of it. And even as far as some of our speakers, we would never be able to have some of the speakers that we do because, we just couldn't afford to pay them to come and join us on a Monday night. So it's really given us an opportunity to have some speakers and, learn some things, be inspired by speakers that even live overseas, and are international. So there's definitely some positives.
We've had a couple gals ask if you can attend a single time meeting free of charge. And then there was a message sent directly to me by Kathy. I don't know if you meant to do that, Kathy, but it said that she knows that MCQ does group projects. The photon on the side of the slide shows an example. Can Cindy or Lori talk about the group projects?
Yeah, thank you. So the quilt subset on the side was for our 25th anniversary. We recruited volunteers to create a flower in whatever technique they wanted. And then a group of them got together and did a collage there. And then it was finished at, I can't remember who did the quilting. if somebody wants to chime in and tell me. And then it was completed at the retreat. So a real nice group project. Yeah, and then again, those small groups, we have informal groups that will get together and they might work through a book, or they might, pick a theme for the year to explore. But, they get to be really tight groups.
And then
Well-
are your meetings recorded? Somebody has a conflict Monday night, but is interested in joining. I would imagine that depends on the speaker.
I can answer that one because I'm the
Okay.
one that usually has most of the contact with the speakers. And I asked the speakers if we can record their presentation. And sometimes they're willing to let us do that and put it on the website for a long period of time. Sometimes they've said, yes, you can record it and have it on your website for a month. And at other times, they really prefer that it not be recorded. So I would say probably about half the time we're able to record it, and half the time, they really request not to. And we honor those wishes that they have. I
Yeah,
see
and-
another.
And does a
question.
prospective member have to have a certain level of artistic ability or quilting experience to join?
Okay, let me answer that question. That was another one I saw that I wanted to answer. The answer to that is no, because I have not been a member of MCQ that long, a few years after I retired. When I was working, and I didn't take time to do much creative stuff. So now that I've had the opportunity to do that, I'm a beginner and I'm a part of a small group, and they all know way more than what I do. But I am so blessed to be a part of that group. They are so willing to share with me. They say, hey, Lori, if you want to learn how to do something, give me a call. And we get together, on a regular, as much of a regular basis as we can during this time. But I am just amazed by their level of ability and their willingness to share. And it's just a great learning opportunity for me. So, definitely not, you don't have to be an expert, because I'm an example of definitely not being an expert, but I'm enjoying being involved in it. And, it's just a great group of people.
One more question. Do you have small groups in different areas of the state?
We don't yet. Usually the small groups kind of informally form, and a lot of it, they might have met at retreat, or we would try to facilitate that when we were meeting in person. But we can certainly help, get in contact with people who live in that region.
When we send out a welcome email to everybody who joins, we usually ask in that email if they would like to be a part of a small group. And there's an opportunity for them to respond, if they want us to help facilitate that.
And then somebody had asked, what does MCQ mean? And that is our abbreviation for Minnesota Contemporary Quilters. Yes. And then somebody asked if they could just attend one meeting, and we really don't have a system in place right now. We're trying to figure out the technology behind that, but if you would like to join or attend one meeting as a guest, go ahead and email us right from the website, and we'll see what we can do.
Oh, this is Laura, and it looks like I typed something in chat, but it didn't go to everyone. It went to Brenda. And my question was, do you have any advice on how a person might get started with contemporary quilting? Although you mentioned these small groups and that, or if you were trying to transition from traditional to more contemporary style, what would you recommend? Because when I see your creations, my stash would not support any of that at the moment.
Well, two things I can think of. A really accessible thing is Quilting Arts is on, I believe it's Thursday mornings on PBS at 8 in the morning, and you can record that. And they will have speakers on who, will demonstrate different techniques that are very approachable. And if that doesn't work for you, the Textile Center Library has DVDs of past seasons.
Oh, okay.
Subscribing to Quilting Arts would be another possibility. And then the other thing is Susan Stein has created several books on using a lot of the techniques. And she's like the #1 seller of art quilting books on Amazon. So checking out her books would be another idea.
Thank
How about you, Lori?
And well, another thing I did was in 2018, I took that class of Cindy Grisdella's that we did jointly with MQ. And that was just one of the first opportunities I had to work with this improv quilting. And, I wasn't that good at it, but I learned some stuff, and it's an easy thing for me to go back to and just kind of put things together. And so it's just, that was one thing I did, was just took a class. And I mean, I felt, man, everybody else was doing these wonderful things, and here's what I'm doing. But, it was a place to start. And so that was one thing I did.
Okay.
Do you see any characteristics that overlap the contemporary or the modern quilt, or the contemporary quilts with the modern quilting? And then she also mentioned that Quilting Arts magazine would be an awesome magazine, but any characteristics between contemporary and modern quilting?
I just joined the Modern Quilters just because, just to be, out of curiosity and such. I think the aesthetic, there is some overlap in terms of kind of wanting to try something new, because if you've been doing this for many years, I don't know about the rest of you, but you're always like, oh, what else is, around the corner. So I think there can be overlap. And for an example, after attending one of their meetings, I was inspired. So here is my challenge, a work in progress for the upcoming challenge of pushing upwards. And their speaker was talking about taking one block. So in my case, it was the drunkard path, is it? And kind of just pushing that and pushing it different scales and different fabrics. So I would say there's overlap, but it's hard for me to articulate what it is. Susan Stein, when I asked her about her definition, she felt one of the big differences with modern quilters and contemporary quilters is modern quilters tend to like having these big open spaces. Let's see if I can do this. So if you like here, where the quilting can showcase. So you have that, negative, or if I were to put white in these spots, you would really see it. So that is one idea, or one way of thinking about it.
And Jill asks, are most of your members exclusively contemporary art quilters, or do they mix in traditional quilting projects too? And then she adds, I guess I'm asking if once you go contemporary, do you go back?
We definitely are dabblers in all mediums. So one of my loves is to make baby quilts, even though babies can't use them for the first year. But I just love like the size of a baby quilt, and that, I can just play with the fabrics that I have in my stash. And, I still use mostly improvisational piecing. But for example, I'm doing a 1-block wonder. We had Maxine Rosenthal last January of 2021. It took me a year to actually get the quilt put together, but I think her work straddles into more traditional with a little bit of that design. There's some design opportunities, but yeah, we definitely dabble. And then we have people who are a fair amount of people who are in both your guild and our guild. Likewise, we have people who are in Wearable Arts Midwest and the Modern Quilt Guild.
And Brenda, our show director, added that a certain you could certainly look at our class schedule for the show coming up. Made Delgado, Karen Stone, they both have kind of an art quilt vibe.
Yep.
Check out their classes. And then do your members do art quilts like landscape pictures?
Yeah, so for example, in the background here, here's an older piece that I made. I was inspired by the Grand Canyon. And so that was my interpretation of it. So, yes.
Well, and I could add too that it's not necessarily using those techniques to make art quilts all the time, because I have made a couple of pillows for friends of mine whose fathers have passed. And so I've said, hey, give me a couple of, your dad's shirts, give me one of his ties. And so I've used that improvisational piecing technique, and I have made pillows for them out of, their dad's shirts and ties. So it's not always an art quilt. It doesn't always need to be an art quilt outcome for using those techniques.
Good point.
All right. Any other questions for our presenters this evening? We really enjoyed the things you had to share with us today, and it's most informative, but it's your creativity is just kind of mind-blowing, and it does inspire people to, I think, to dabble or to look at this in a different way and maybe go buy some of those bright fabrics that we wouldn't necessarily put in a traditional quilt. So thank you very much. This is a whole different style of quilting that we all need to be much more aware of and know what we're looking at so we can appreciate it.
Great. Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much, ladies. Thank you.
Yes, and our
Thank
website
you.
is minnesotacontemporaryquilters.com. So go there if you want to see those programs, or if you want to join, there's a button there to do that. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing your exhibit
Yes,
at the
looking
show
forward to
in
being in
June.
person.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Cindy and Lori. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.